Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Philadelphia Eagles stifled the Green Bay Packers at every turn. Also, Jayden Daniels made a triumphant entry to the playoffs. And after dominating the Steelers, the Ravens should scare everyone.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
It started on the very first play. The Green Bay Packers fumble the opening kickoff. The Philadelphia Eagles score a touchdown. And from there, it was all over but the crying. A 22-10 win for Philadelphia. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Lou, when we did our crossover early in the week, we talked about the rust factor with Jalen Hurts. We talked about how great this Philadelphia Eagles defense is, and we talked about Saquon Barkley. What phase stood out to you the most in this one?
Yeah, I think from an offensive perspective, it was the run game. Of course, that was the bread and butter that got them to the postseason, that got them the number 2 seed. But I think overall, this win was all about the defense. 3 turnovers in this football game. 4, if you count the kickoff return, forced fumble from Oren Burks, the Eagles linebacker. Overall, the defense set the tone from the start, and they had to be the ones that won them this football game because the passing game did not take advantage of 2 turnovers in the first half. Jalen Hurts definitely did look rusty. Vic Fangio's defense headed into the playoffs as the number 1 unit in most categories, and I thought them, specifically Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter up front, they were the reason they won this football game. But the passing game, you're going to have to be better than that if you're going to win a championship.
Yeah, and it was even some of the offensive line. We did not expect to see Jalen Hurts having to run. After the first drive, it looked like he wasn't going to get touched all game, and then all of a sudden there was some leaks here, some leaks there, and Jalen Hurts got to roll out. Jeff Hafley brought a lot of big-time pressure. What kind of answers do you think they can find there? Because this has been a bugaboo for Jalen Hurts. When you big blitz Jalen Hurts, it's a problem.
Yeah, and I think this was an issue in last year's playoff game against Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles sent the house on Jalen, and it's why the Eagles were sent home early. I don't know if there is an easy answer. I think this has been Jalen Hurts, like you said, his bugaboo that he hasn't been able to figure out his entire career. I do think Kellen Moore needs to do a lot better job of having quick answers. I think Kellen Moore did not have the sharpest play calling job today against Green Bay, so he's got to get him, I think, on the run, maybe more moving pockets, some play action, get him more under center. Overall, I thought Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore were not sharp today. And again, it got you a win in the wild card round, but can you do this against a Detroit Lions team, or if you play a Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen, God forbid, in a Super Bowl? This isn't going to be good enough. So I think Kellen Moore, he has to find a better way to get Jalen some easy answers, because Hurts just isn't that guy that I think is going to make things happen against the blitz on his own.
The Eagles now await the winner of LA and Minnesota. But we saw them lose Nakobe Dean in this game. Their starting linebacker, Zach Bond, is an all-pro this year, so we know he can play. But what does that mean for this defense that has been the number 1 defense in the league this season? Yeah,
it's tough. And Nakobe Dean, outside of, I thought Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter were the best players on the defense today, and everybody shined. But I thought Nakobe Dean was having an exceptional first half. So
pick your favorite Georgia player.
Yeah, exactly. All the Georgia Bulldogs stepped up in the playoffs. There's no replacing Nakobe Dean in the playoffs. Oren Burks has had a couple good games, and he's a veteran that was San Fran's first primary backup last year. He played in a Super Bowl, but overall, I think actually the answer will be play more DBs, maybe go with Sidney Brown, some more 3 safety looks, play some dime packages. I think that's a move, but luckily, Zach Bond looked like the best linebacker in football again today, so it's a tough loss, and he's probably done, as you mentioned, but I think overall they still have plenty of talent on this defense to go far.
This running game, if it's going to be as run-heavy as it has been all season, is that enough to beat a Detroit Lions team? Is that enough to take on a Vikings team that's been playing seemingly way ahead of their talent level so far this season? Or are they going to have to get more out of Jalen Hurts in this passing game, you think?
It could be. I think when you have a historic run game, when you don't turn the ball over, when you have the number 1 defense, those 3 things together, that can beat anybody, especially in NFL 2024 where all these teams are so close. But for me, Yeah, Peter, Jalen Hurts is going to have to be better, at least than he was today. Does he need to be the 2022 Jalen that was better than Mahomes in a Super Bowl? No, I don't think you're going to get that Jalen this year, but he has to be better than today because there's going to be games where the Eagles defense, they do give up 20, 25, 30 plus points, and I think they'll have to pass to win at least one playoff game. So yes, he's going to have to be better if they want to get a parade in Philadelphia this year.
You can stay up to date on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. We're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Commanders and Buccaneers played a thriller. Before we get to that, the national title game in college football is set. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. The monster matchup of the divisional round is Bills-Ravens. Each team dominated their wildcard game, so the line is probably going to see some movement over the next week. Right now, FanDuel has the Bills favored at home by 1.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Patriots are bringing a Pats legend back to lead the team.
The New England Patriots are hiring Mike Vrabel as their 16th head coach in franchise history for one main reason. They prioritized experience over potential. I'm Mike DeBate, host of Locked On Patriots, and Patriots Nation will forever have an affinity for Mike Vrabel. Well, now he's going to get that chance to guide that franchise back to respectability. Not an easy task, but Vrabel does have the experience for it. In 2018, he was named the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, led the Titans to 2 AFC South titles and 3 playoff berths. Some of you out there right now are wondering whether or not a younger, more innovative play caller on offense, like Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, might have been a better fit for the Patriots long term. But for right now, for a team that is currently in desperate need of direction when it comes to building a program, when it comes to correcting countless mistakes on football fundamentals, Mike Vrabel may prove to be the safer and more prudent choice at this time.
The Broncos showed up in Buffalo, then the Bills smashed them.
The Buffalo Bills defeated the Denver Broncos 31-7 and advance to the divisional round of the playoffs. We got the result and the performance I was hoping to see. Defense showed up, the run game was dominant, and Josh Allen did special things.
And Ohio State did what they needed to do to beat Texas to stamp their ticket to the college football playoff title game.
Ohio State found a way to beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl to advance to play in the national championship. What is up, guys? My name is Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, and all week we'll be talking about Ohio State needing to do whatever it takes to win the Cotton Bowl, and that's exactly what they did. One of those ways came toward the end of the first half, shortly after Texas tied the game at 7. Trevian Henderson said, "We're not going into the locker room at halftime with this score." He took a Will Howard screen pass 75 yards to the house. The Buckeyes have a 14-7 halftime lead. Toward the end of the game, once again, Texas is driving, trying to score, trying to tie the game. Jack Sawyer turns a strip sack into a strip 6. He recovers the fumble that he forced. He takes the ball 80-plus yards down the right sideline. Ohio State has a 28-14 lead, and that's all she wrote. The Buckeyes found a way to beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl, and they advanced to play Notre Dame in the national championship on January 20th. Man, I can't wait.
Jayden Daniels has arrived in the postseason. Locked On Commanders host David Harrison breaks down his playoff debut.
23-20 is your final score from Tampa, Florida, where the Washington Commanders have defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the NFC South Division champion. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 4 times in a row, 5 years in a row, making the playoffs. So make no mistake about it. While the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not been playing the most consistent football all year, certainly not playing the most consistent football entering the postseason, this is a team that is chock full of veterans, chock full of playoff experience. It's a coaching staff that has Super Bowl rings on it, that has playoff experience. This is a team that understands what the pressure of the wild card round really means. They know how to handle it. They know how to prepare in spite of it. And this Washington Commanders team that certainly has some of those people on their team as well. Guys like Bobby Wagner, for example, Zach Ertz, for example, but they're also led by a lot of young or somewhat inexperienced people. Cliff Kingsbury is a coach who really hasn't had a lot of playoff experience coming into this season. Jayden Daniels, obviously the rookie. Mikey Sainer still a rookie starting cornerback. So a lot of inexperience. And for me, the main takeaway from this game, other than the fact that we've got another week of football to prepare for, and we're going to the divisional round playoffs in Detroit to watch the Washington Commanders take on the Detroit Lions, what it really means to me is that the potential of this team, while we're all incredibly excited about the potential of this team, while we're all incredibly hyped up about the potential of this team, I don't know if even we fully grasp what the full potential of this team is. And of course, nobody is guaranteeing or going to go out on a limb and guarantee a Super Bowl championship this year. But I think as you watch this team continue to overcome odds, and it's not like people expected the Buccaneers to come in here and just wipe the floor with the Commanders and whoop their butts and all that stuff. The Washington Commanders were very much respected, I think, in most of the conversations I heard leading into the competition. So it's not like people took them for granted. But when you look at where they came from, where we were a year ago right now, where we were 8 months ago even right now, to where this Washington Commanders team stands, I think it's very, very impressive. And it kind of shows the resiliency and, yes, destiny. That's what the thumbnail says. It says divisional destiny. That is kind of a word that's been thrown around about this team. And look, 5 straight games, winning games on the final score. Not good for the blood pressure, not good for my sleep, right? I was sitting here going, man, we're going to have another primetime overtime game. I can't keep sleeping or lack of sleeping like this and stay healthy. So it's not good for all of those things, but man, is it good for the soul to see this team pull those things out? And I mean, look, I don't know about you guys sitting at home or if those of you who are in the stadium or wherever you were watching this game, when the Washington Commanders got their hands on the ball with 4:41 left in the game, 2020 game, I looked at it and said, man, this team is the ultimate 4-minute offense team. It's the ultimate 2-minute offense team. They are going to absolutely have the ability to come down here, and Cliff Kingsbury is going to have the ability to call the right plays. Jayden Daniels is going to have the ability to execute the right plays, and this Washington Commanders team is absolutely going to have themselves in a position to where I thought they would be able to take a go-ahead score with maybe a minute or so left on the clock, 30 seconds left on the clock, hopefully drain the Buccaneers of their timeouts in the process, and really put Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a rough situation. But boy, was I wrong, because instead they completely dried out the Buccaneers of their timeouts. They drained the clock, and Zane Gonzalez, the fellow Sun Devil, making us proud, coming out here nailing. Well, I shouldn't say nailing the crossbar, nailing the goalpost, but making a game-winning field goal. And of course, just like that, it has to be with a little bit of drama, because why not? That is what this Washington Commanders season has been all about. Taking a look at our X Factor performances coming into the week, my X Factor in this game was linebacker Frankie Luvu, and Frankie Luvu certainly was all over the place on this field, certainly making some plays, 4 tackles combined, no sacks, no interceptions, no fumble recoveries, things like that. So stat box, again, not going to be the sexiest thing in the world, but Frankie Luvu certainly making his presence felt. Actually was the player that broke down the huddle before the team headed into the locker room for the last time before the game began. So Frankie Luvu certainly making an impact on the team, not making an impact on maybe your daily fantasy. If you have an individual defensive player. Insider in X Factors, Tyler Biadasz, Marshawn Lattimore. Look, I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to walk out from this game. And as far as the one-on-one rivalry with Mike Evans is going to be concerned, this is going to be a chapter that he didn't necessarily win. Mike Evans certainly, I think, getting the better of him, certainly the scheme by Liam Cohen, doing some things to allow Mike Evans to get the better of Marshawn. But something that stood out about Marshawn Lattimore, not just the competitiveness, but also the way that the team kind of handled his workload. He was on the field, he was off the field, he would take extended breaks, and I think they really kind of were mindful, because remember the last time he came back to play for this team, he played all of the game, against the New Orleans Saints. They didn't really test him, they didn't really stress him at all, because they didn't target him, a single time in that game. But then the Philadelphia Eagles really came out and kind of went after him. He ends up aggravating that hamstring. I think the Washington Commanders kind of learned from that a little bit. So in this game, you don't see Marshawn out there for every single rep, every single time. They kind of brought him off the field and then brought him back in for third down situations, things like that. And, this is just kind of my assumption. I think that was a lot to do with trying to make sure that they didn't repeat those same mistakes, because you definitely want Marshawn Lattimore available against the Detroit Lions, against a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to need a guy like Marshawn Lattimore on the field. So I think certainly that had a part to do with it. But again, this defense just tends to play better when Marshawn is on the field. I can't really put my finger on it. Maybe it's a spiritual kind of a spirit animal type of situation, but whatever it is, the defense just plays better. And I think that outside of a handful of plays here tonight, the Washington Commanders certainly at least stepped up to the point where they were allowed to, or they were able to keep the Buccaneers offense from doing things that would let this game get out of hand. Look, We talked about insiders, talked about it before the game. Everybody came in this thing saying this is going to be a shootout. This is going to be a back and forth, high scoring affair. And what typically happens when everybody expects that to happen? A defensive affair. And 23-20 is not the most defense, not like 17-10, 14-10, something like that. But 23-20, 43 points, certainly under the 50.5 total point projection on FanDuel. So definitely more of a defensive battle, I think, than everybody expected, which tends to happen when everybody expects a battle.
You can stay up to date on the Washington Commanders by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Commanders on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Ravens showed everyone why they need to be worried about Baltimore. Could Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? Because that's happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. In fact, yesterday, I was like, nope, not doing that one anymore. Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. For me, Rocket Money, best feature is the subscription tracker. You got to use it. You got to use it. I do, because I don't keep track of those things as well as I should. That's what Rocket Money is for. To paraphrase a famous TV line, that's what the Rocket Money is for. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. The Ravens absolutely demoralized the Steelers at every turn of their wild card matchup on Saturday. As Locked On Ravens host Kevin Ostreicher discusses, this win shows why everyone should be scared of Baltimore.
The Ravens just took Pittsburgh's soul and they crunched it up. Pittsburgh looked defeated. They looked like they didn't want to be there. And for a team in Pittsburgh that, they lost 4 straight. They struggled down the stretch. A lot of people thought, okay, AFC North, this is a game that's the uncertainty factor. And yes, I was on that train of like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen in this game. Chargers were a lot more straightforward, and the Chargers got beaten badly by Houston. But with Pittsburgh, it's like they know you, you know them. What's it going to be? And Baltimore said, here's the run game. Try to stop it. I think the encapsulation of this game was the Ravens, I think on their second touchdown drive it was, 13 plays, and they had all 13 plays of those be runs. Dominated the line of scrimmage. Derrick Henry getting to the second level. Pittsburgh played scared for the majority of this game. And Pittsburgh, they are who we thought they were. They are who we thought they were, and that is frauds. Pittsburgh, they were frauds the entire time. If you've been listening to me every day on Locked On Ravens, I told you that they were frauds. I said that the offense was awful. I told you about the Cincinnati defense too, and I know a lot of people are in agreement with me. I'm not calling anybody out here. I'm just saying that we knew it. I knew it. You knew it. We all knew it. The Steelers were frauds, and that is what it is. And the Ravens took their lunch money over and over and over again. Patrick Queen wanted nothing to do with Derrick Henry. Joey Porter Jr. wanted nothing to do with Derrick Henry. And when you look at the final box score, this is exactly what you wanted to see from the Ravens. How many rush attempts did Baltimore have? I'll tell you, 50. 5-0. Or maybe it's the other way. 5-0. There we go. You look at that, 50 rushing attempts. The Ravens in their entire AFC Championship loss to the Chiefs last season had 16. They got away from who they were. And a lot of people, I understood it, you understood it. If the Ravens hadn't gotten away from who were in that game, they would have had a much better shot to win.
Here's the problem that I have with Ravens-Bills, and it's the only problem that I have with Ravens-Bills. No matter what happens, one of those quarterbacks has to lose, which means one of those quarterbacks who has a narrative that they struggle in the postseason, by definition, has to lose. It could be 48-45, and the narrative will be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen can't win in the biggest spots. That is a bummer. But it was going to have to happen at some point. If it wasn't this week, it was going to have to be next week, and the stakes are even bigger. So let's just try and enjoy the ride and not overreact, please. And finally, more bets were placed on Saquon Barkley to score a touchdown against the Packers than were placed on any other player in Sunday's 3 NFL playoff games at multiple sports books, with Philadelphia leading 22-10. with just over a minute to play. Barkley took a handoff over the left tackle, burst through the Packers defense and into the clear. It would have been a house call. He slid down after picking up the first down. One of the most popular props included in Sunday's parlays. Barkley's smart football play cost a lot of people a lot of money. Whether it will affect his performance in the divisional round, I guess we'll see. It might affect the way that you bet on him in the divisional round. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will the Rams overcome everything going on around them to pull off the wild card win over the Vikings? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.